What is the cruelest thing someone has told you? USA. Towards the end of my wife's 3-year journey with brain cancer, I was quite frazzled and exhausted being on 24/7 as her caregiver. Anyone who has been a caregiver for a family member will understand this. The home hospice workers, hospital support staff including social workers, doctors, and nurses had nothing but good things to say about the care, love, and support I was giving her in the hospital and at home. Anyway, her cousin, whom I'd never met in person, visited from out of town and criticized just about everything I was doing. I said I was doing the best I could possibly do under the circumstances, and no one else had any issue. He had the balls to say something like, "Well, she's the one who's dying and nothing you're going through even matters." I let that sink in for a bit and said, I hope you never have to go through anything like this, because if you did, you'd realize what a terrible thing that is to say to someone. Then I asked him to leave. Asshat. Update. Thank you so much for the sheer number of upvotes and comments. When my wife passed away several months later, 2014, her cousin and his husband flew in for the services. He pretty much avoided me. However, his husband did speak to me, offering condolences, and said that he was sure my wife really appreciated what I did and the sacrifices I made. If you're reading this, John, you're a class act. I know everyone can't say this, but for me, time heals. In her honor, and as a way to pay it forward for all the help and support we received, I volunteer for the American Cancer Society. I drive patients to and from their appointments. It's rewarding knowing I'm making a difference in their lives. Next story. The reason you try so hard to please everyone, the reason you give so much love that it's suffocating, is because you know that other than affection, you have nothing to offer anyone. You're a burden on everyone you care about. We all barely tolerate you. I don't know how you've made it this far in life. I'll never forget that. Word for word. Being attacked for the sin of caring about people is just crazy to me. There are much more elegant ways to say someone, "Hey, I need some space," other than, we all barely tolerate you. OP, I hope you found some people around you who absolutely adore what you have to give. Everyone deserves that, except maybe this person. Next story. I was best friends with a girl throughout 7th grade and into 8th grade, when one day after winter break, she suddenly stopped talking to me. I spent years wondering what I could have done, since she seamlessly turned all of our mutual friends against me too. Fast forward to senior year in high school, and we met again during a college visit through a program. She asked me if I wanted to know why she stopped being my friend, and I warily said yes, because why not? No reason. I was just tired of seeing you happy and getting to live the best life, so I told everyone what a horrible friend you were to me when I was depressed. Sorry. I said nothing and just walked away, really screwed with my head for the longest time. Kids can be cruel, sure, but that's messed up. Edit. I lived in an abusive household throughout my childhood and teen years. School was where I was happy to be surrounded by other kids my age because that meant I was away from my parents. Didn't have to be scared of being yelled at or being hit in the 8 hours I was there. I didn't tell anyone about the abuse at home because it was something I thought was normal and people wouldn't care. I don't know if my continuous joy to be at school was why my ex-best friend turned against me or she just hated my smiling face. This was over 15 years ago, and I'm not going to find her on social media and rehash it. Next story. I've been the only real father to one of my stepsons, though he's always been a real son to me for 13 years. 6 months ago, he died. A couple days after, my wife was arguing with me and screamed, "It's not your son that died." She has since said that my grieving at his funeral seemed to be to make it about me and accused me of my grief being for attention. I'd say that was pretty cruel. Next story. My father kept giving me death glares over the table. My mother asks him what's wrong. He just shouts, "I just can't stand to look at his freaking face." This is because I had a couple D's on my report card. I don't remember my father ever telling me he loved me, but I'll remember him saying that until the day I die. And, just a reminder to tell your kids you love them, I guess. And also, not to say that to them? That would be a good idea too. Next story. My father-in-law ranted one night at the dinner table that we were nuts to want to adopt a toddler or child from, quote, some crackhead. You want some crackhead to give your baby a personality? Followed by gesturing at my mother-in-law, saying, she'll be devastated if she gets a grandchild and not a grandbaby. That was a great first wedding anniversary. They eventually came around and loved our foster son as much as we did, but this scorned me in a way that I don't think I'll ever fully fully recover from. Next story. A successful kid at school when I was a kid back in the 80s told me that he'd bet money that I'd end up as a loser and as a homeless, unemployed person who'd be a burden to society. I never quite forgot that sentence. I still think of it today, 35 plus years later. I'm doing fine. I got a job that a lot of people would love in the world's biggest companies. Have a house all paid for. I mean, I'm not rich. That much is true, but I'm fine. Next story. The day after we found out my 46-year-old wife had 2 months to live, my mother drove to our house to say, "There's nothing I can do about it." My 43-year-old younger brother, unemployed and still living with his mother, needs her help to get his vacation in before his unemployment compensation ran out, so that was a priority. Me, with 2 grade school children and a dying wife, wasn't as important, apparently. Next story. My long-distance ex-girlfriend and I were drifting apart. For months, we rarely spoke and we rarely saw each other. I was working 12 to 15 hours a day and my little brother wasn't doing well. Cancer. And then when he passed, she texted me, "OMG RIP," and that was it. I flew home for the funeral while I was sitting in the airport bar about to fly 11 hours, and she texted me pictures of her kissing some guy. I just responded, "Really? Now?" She'd seen pictures of me and another girl hanging out and decided this was the way to do things. The other girl is currently sleeping beside me, and we're very, very happy. Edit. A lot of people are asking me if I was cheating on the ex before all this happened. Well, about 5 months or so before all this, the ex was acting strange and being off with me, and it came out that she had been only kissing some other guy at a party. We had a fight, but she seemed sincerely sorry, so we went from there. At this other time, the other girl and I were only hanging out, worked at the same place, had the same day off once a week, lived in the same building. 1, knowing this girl, it wasn't only kissing. 2, everything changed after that. I could tell she was over me and into the other guy. Phone calls became short and there was no love anymore. She could only talk to me during work hours and crap. Me and the other girl started seeing each other a lot more. And I guess, yeah, I was cheating on her emotionally. And then when I figured out she was seeing the other guy, it became physical. I know, the response is, I should have broken it off before doing that, but in reality, I was just drifting through my days. My little bro wasn't doing well and he was getting worse every day. I did love my ex, which is why I stayed with her, but the new girl, well, she was there for me when things got bad. Like I said, my ex texted me, "OMG RIP," not even a phone call, whereas the new girl showed up to my place with printed and framed photos of my brother, one for me and one for my dad. She sat with me while I cried all night. I suppose by then the relationship between me and the ex was long over. Perhaps I deserved the ugly breakup. I personally don't think so. It's over could have worked too, but anyway. Okay. I'm going to sound like a jerk here, but OP, I do not think is justified. And I didn't really want to talk about it because it's not, the main point of the story. But then OP had a whole edit trying to justify it. Like, okay. If you're going to go that hard defending yourself, you gotta be right. Because I don't think you are. You don't get to say, "Oh, it's over" would have worked too. If you also didn't just say it's over, like, why are you expecting more emotional maturity out of her than yourself in that situation? Anyway, I know it's not the point. I just wanted to say, if you're in this situation, don't do that. Obviously, OP was under a lot of emotional distress. That's fair. But also, I don't think you had, full rights to be super upset about her sending the picture. Obviously, terrible timing. She was trying to hurt you the most she possibly could. Jerk move, without a doubt. But it also didn't come from nowhere. And to be fair, this isn't like a OP's the jerk or something like that. No, everyone sucks here. I'm glad you sorted things out, though, I hope. And I am truly sorry about your loss. Next story. You shouldn't smile so big. Your right eye is smaller than your left and it looks really obvious in photos. To this day, I still try to crinkle my eyes so they look even in photos or smile less. Next story. I wasn't really your friend. I just pitied you. As someone who's on the spectrum and has a difficult time making friends, it really shook me. Kind of burst my bubble, and I realized that I'd never had any friends before and still don't, and that I've been a loser since kindergarten. Next story. This is exactly why you'll never make a good girlfriend. You should just give up now. My very recent ex, when I was helping him get back into his locked house and had my phone on silent and missed the call from a locksmith. Next story. Back in high school, I had a friend who would always give me crap for things. For a while, it was regular, boys being boys kind of stuff, but eventually it grew malicious. One day in class, we got into a bit of an argument over cars. It was a really stupid argument, but for some reason, he decided to kick it up a notch. He knew a little bit about my issues with the depression and wanting to take my own life. So in front of everyone, he decided to start making fun of me for it. He was saying stuff like, well, at least I'm not gonna go home and blow my brains out at some point. And, you're just a depressed loser who's probably gonna take his own life. After class, I texted him and gave him one chance to apologize. He refused and told me to screw off. So later that day, I came up to him and just started laying punches into his face. Man, it felt good. Now, I am not an advocate for physical violence solving problems, for the most part. This, however, I don't mind it, is what I'll say. And for legal reasons, it is all I'll say. Next story. I was talking to two girls, not even because either of us were into each other, just because they were semi-friendly with my mate who was going for a pee. One of the girl's brothers comes over and says, hey, you all right? You do realize you're never going to get a girlfriend and will die alone, right? Both of the girls pee themselves laughing and he walks off, and I don't know what to do and just say, geez. Still pisses me off to this day. Next story. I don't know why you think we're friends enough for you to talk to me, but we aren't. Me, her, and a bunch of other friends were all commenting on a photo on Facebook. I responded to something she said, and that was roughly her response, followed by being unfriended. Not even sure why. We'd all just graduated and I thought we were on friendly terms, but I guess not. Really came out of the blue as far as I could tell. Next story. Ex-best friend almost 9 years ago after a devastating miscarriage. It's you and insert husband's name fault. You two aren't even married a year and you two think you're ready for a baby? It's your fault you lost it. It's a bad idea. That was 2 days after I'd lost our baby at 12 weeks. We were married 10 months and it was a surprise. Took almost another 5, but hey, we got our baby. They're still single and I'll be married 10 years next year. I think they were jealous, but it hurt so bad, and it still hurts today. Next story. This still hurts 25 years later. I told X that he looked beautiful while sleeping, and he really did. He said, and I quote, you look like an R word when you're sleeping. I said, oh, okay, thank you for telling me. You can go now. That was the end of that. Look, I can't understand what is in this dude's head. Like, is there no understanding of cause and effect, or that he's talking to a real person? How can you think that is ever the right thing to say to someone? I'm just baffled. It's hilarious to me because I don't understand. Next story. When my son died of sudden infant death syndrome at the age of 5 months, I started receiving condolence cards from neighbors and such. One card came unaddressed with a return, in other words, anonymous. I opened the card and it's one of those that is blank and you fill in your message. Someone had stuck a clipping of a poem in it that talked about how, quote, children are a gift from heaven sent to people worthy of them. They then signed it, you must have been a lousy parent who didn't deserve a child for God to take your son away from you. I think I cried as hard as when I found my son dead. It was like he died all over again. I never found out who sent it, but I had a pretty good idea since I inventoried all the neighbors who sent cards, and the only one I didn't have one from was the hateful couple that lived across the street, unless you counted the anonymous one being from them. Sometimes, even 39 years later, it still stings when I think about it. Next story. If God had wanted your parents to have children, he'd have given them some. From my Bible teacher at a Christian school. It seemed great at first on the surface, but was really just a hotbed of legalistic fundamentalists. It was when he was frustrated by me asking a question about scripture and decided to snark on the fact that I'm adopted. He was always that jerk teacher who'd get away with saying hurtful things to students because, quote, oh, you just don't understand his sense of humor, per the administration. My parents are the most incredible people in the world and far better Christians than this teacher ever could be. I mean, hell, a rabid atheist would be more Christ-like by default than that hateful old crap stain. Next story. My cat had just died, and I was in bed petting my sister's cat who liked to curl up with me. She came over and started petting the cat, and completely without looking at me, she said, I'm happy because I know the cat will never love you, only me, because she's my cat. And although she's showing you affection right now, she doesn't care because she's mine, and your cat is dead. I burst into tears. It's not the worst thing that's ever been said to me. Our mother is a lot worse, but it was the most unnecessarily cruel, and she didn't even seem to realize it until I began to cry. Edit. Since this is getting attention, she was about 15 and has since apologized. Our mother is incredibly verbally abusive, so I think that's where she picked it up. It's been several years since then, and I have since forgiven her. Next story. I couldn't decide between dozens of things my parents said to me. So walking home late one night, I was getting catcalled by some girl in a car full of guys when she yelled out, "Hey, I've screwed uglier than you!" And then they all laughed and peeled out. Next story. Go home. Your parents have a surprise waiting for you. So I'd skip home, all excited, wondering what it could be. The surprise was the news that my mom's chemo failed. A new growth had been spotted and she would be dead within a year. Next story. 4 days after my husband passed away, I was having coffee with a friend. I was telling her that if I had known his stay in the hospital would be so short, I would have been with him every minute of the day, even if it meant having someone else take care of our children. I was devastated. She said, "I told you so. I told you could ask us to take care of the kids. I knew you would regret this." I was shocked because that's never a helpful thing to say, but also that she felt the need to prove to me she was right and I was wrong in that context felt extremely unwarranted and cruel. Next story. Some girl one time told me I was too white trash to have a real job and no respectable company would hire me. Funny thing is, I make pretty decent money now and have a job I like most of the time, and she's unemployed with a GoFundMe page to help with bills. Next story. I was the jerk in this story. When I was probably in my early teens, early 80s, my sister had some friends over, and one of them had a somewhat large nose. For reasons that escape me entirely, I decided to joke with her by saying, "Is that your nose or are you eating a banana?" My mom scolded me about it, and the girl said it didn't bother her, but I suspect it might have. I don't even think I was trying to be mean, I just thought it was funny, and clueless me had no concept of how it would be hurtful. I still cringe when I think about it. But hey, being able to look at these things that happen in your life and cringe at them, that's a lot of growth. That level of self-reflection is something so scarily rare, it seems. So great work, OP. I'm glad you can take experiences and learn from them. It's what makes us human after all. Next story. I dated a girl for over a year that I was head over heels for, but we fought a lot and we had cultural differences. I was white and she was Indian. She told me that she needed time to be alone and was going home for the holidays. She specifically said she couldn't be with anyone because she needed to be single and talk to her parents about her life. But we had agreed we would talk about our relationship when she got back, so I gave her space. I believed her, and we didn't talk for 3 weeks. She called me on Christmas Eve to ask how I was doing, and at first I really appreciated it, only to find out she called me because she wanted to brag about how she is with her coworker now and is very happy. My heart sank, and I was silent. She ended up hanging up on me, saying, and I quote, "What's wrong with you for not being happy for me? How selfish of a person are you?" It was that statement and the lack of empathy from her that just really hurt. I no longer enjoy Christmas time. I'm doing better since, but I tend to find it hard to open up to women now. Next story. First guy I was in love with and dated broke up with me by telling me he never cared for me, wasn't attracted to me, and every word he said was a lie. Gave me trust issues for every guy after. Wonder if they actually mean it or if they just want company / to get laid. Next story. My narcissistic mother and I have a, strenuous relationship at best. We were in an intense argument. Read, her attacking and verbally abusing me while I sat quietly and occasionally tried to calmly get her to start thinking logically again. It was while I was in a depressive state, and she said something that finally made me snap and confess to self-injuring. She paused, looked straight through my teary eyes and into my soul and said, "What, because your sister does?" Normally, I'd brush something like that off. It's an absolutely predictable thing for her to say, but the combination of my extreme vulnerability at that moment and her cold and calculated malice, she knew exactly how much it would hurt, wounded me to my very core and made me feel worthless and fake like nothing else has. She effectively stripped me of my individuality, using the one thing that was helping me cling to what little control over my life I had left. You don't realize the amount of faith you put in your parents until all, and I mean all of it is taken from you. That one sentence still haunts me on bad days. Next story. My mom thinks being mean to me is a good way to get me to lose weight. I hear, "You're a fat pig. Lose the damn weight so you actually look presentable. Where's your neck at? Oh, it's under your chin fat. Ugh, you're a fat slob and a disgrace. I don't know how you look in the mirror and are okay with what you see. About 20 times a week. I've tried to tell her that being mean doesn't work. It doesn't make me want to lose weight. But at this point, it doesn't bother me anymore as I'm so used to it. I guess I would be more worried if the insults stopped as she's given up on trying to help. Next story. I think about the girl who suddenly started avoiding me, saying that I creeped her out when I asked her what was going on. To be fair, I don't entirely blame her, but smiling was not my strong suit at the time, and people with Asperger's have too many thoughts go through their heads at the same time, causing a sort of intense look on their face. So no, I don't blame her, but there are nicer ways to say it, and it taught me to have more facial expression. I was 15. Learning to smile was very, very hard for me to do, but I eventually got there. Next story. Less than a week ago, my fiancé of 8 years called me up out of the blue and uttered words I never wanted to hear. I don't want to marry you. There's someone else. Every day since has been nothing but fading in and out since I've lost everything I'd built my life around. Not to mention I'm facing a potential cancer diagnosis. I'm scared, I'm angry, and I feel so incredibly alone now. Really about ready to call it quits. Next story. You don't have the brains God gave a goose. My mom. You act like you don't have a brain in your head. Also, my mom. You don't deserve to be a Boy Scout. My stepfather, after buying me the Boy Scout manuals, uniform, etc., he said it because he didn't feel like spending time with me and taking me to weekly meetings, made me neatly pack those things and give them back. You don't deserve to have children. My ex-wife, echoing what my stepfather had said many years later because she knew how much it had hurt me. She said it because she had been leading me on through marriage and several years of getting established. Turns out, according to her sister, she never wanted children, never intended to have children, even though I'd been very clear about how important it was to me. She lied to me and led me on. Anyone who is willing to hold those things that they know hurt you the most and use them against you, better to be out of your life than in. Still, easy to say now. It must have sucked real bad in the moment. I hope you've managed to move on with your life and found someone who actually loves you because, whew, she sure didn't. Next story. I don't know who you are anymore. By my overly dramatic mother, because I didn't want to drive home to sleep there because she felt nervous sleeping alone at the house when I already told her I was sleeping over at my friend's house. Also, we live in a good crime-free neighborhood. Been there 10 years. Next story. He didn't mean it cruelly. I know he didn't, because I've known him for years and he's a nice person, just a bit socially inept. He was in a bad place, and I was too. I had no friends, I wanted to take my own life, and I didn't see why I shouldn't. He was one of the few people I actually trusted. I'd known him for 6 years at that point. I'd been to his house, knew his parents, his sister was friends with my sister. I was happy to have at least one person who at least sort of cared about me. So I was talking to him and he was sad about something, said that no one cared about him. And I told him that it wasn't true, that he had friends, and that we were friends. It took him a while before he said, I don't really consider you a friend. We are friends now. I have friends now. I love them. They care about me. But hearing that at what was probably my lowest point from the only person I thought cared about me, it sticks. I know I should forget it, but it hurt. And I can't be close to people without wondering if they'd just tolerate me out of pity. It freaking sucks, and I hate that I still remember what he said. Next story. I was in a domestic violence relationship, and my dad told me I could stay with him. My 12-year-old son and I left my ex while he was at work. I was also 4 months pregnant. I was with my dad for a week. He was always smoking weed, and I asked him not to around me since I was pregnant. He told me he didn't care if my baby died. He wouldn't stop smoking. He proceeded to kick me and my son out. I ended up losing my daughter, and I haven't forgiven him since. I haven't spoken to him since then. That was in 2013. There was more, but telling me his smoking was more important than his granddaughter broke me, and our relationship forever. Next story. You are bad at cutting things. I can't remember the age I was when I was told this, but I was really young, like 4 to 5. It made me cry like a girl in front of my classroom full of little fellow humans. It's a weird one, I know, but for some reason, the memory is still incredibly vivid in my mind. And yeah, okay, I was extremely crap at cutting things with scissors. Next story. Not me, but my wife. We had a child together at 18. When she got pregnant towards the end of senior year, her parents wouldn't let us see each other. Obviously, we found ways to be together, but during that time, her highly conservative parents called her names and berated her regularly. I believe her dad called her a disgusting harlot and said she would be a bad mother. They frequently told her that there's no way she would ever succeed now, and that her dad wanted to end me. 7 years later, we're still married, our son is amazing, and we both have college degrees and make a crap ton of money. I can't believe she still speaks to them. I will always look at them and remember all the stories she told me about them when we were kids. It's hard for me to overlook any of that despite all they do to make up for it. She must be eternally sad about all of it. I feel so bad for all of what they must have said to her. Next story. I started dating a friend of mine after a really bad breakup from a manipulative, emotionally abusive ex. When my friend and I got into a fight, he told me, "Your ex was right about you," knowing full well what my ex had said about me. Screw that. Screw him. It felt amazing to reject his offer of trying to become friends again after about 6 months. Next story.
You would be almost pretty if you lost weight.
Thank you, Grandma. I was going to eat a few crackers with cheese for my only meal today, but I appreciate you reminding me that anorexia never takes a break. I'm sure I can be smaller than 85 pounds if I try a little harder. But as a positive, that old female dog has lost her mind in a nursing home and can wither away in her bitterness without ever having a chance to treat my kids the way she treated me. Next story. I cannot have kids. I had cervical cancer when I was in my early 20s due to HPV contracted from an assault when I was 14. Gift that keeps on giving. Just about everyone who matters in my life knows this. When I met my husband, it was a point that I made very clear that a future with me meant a future without kids. Hop forward to our wedding shower. Everything is going great until he breaks a single ribbon on a gift. For those who don't know, breaking a ribbon on a gift at a wedding shower supposedly means you're going to have kids. My mom immediately screams, "Yay, so when do I get grandkids?" I'm hurt and embarrassed. My then fiance is dumbfounded, and everyone in the room is looking at my mom like, what the hell is wrong with this lady? I am so thankful that one of my bridesmaids who was helping with gifts didn't miss a beat and said, "They will be having puppies." Puppies are good. Next story. This happened right after Anthony Bourdain died. I was playing PUBG with some random people I met and ended up in a group with 2 brothers. We were doing well, so we played several games in a row together before his brother joined. Apparently, one of their high school classmates had just taken his own life. They started calling him horrible names. A coward, a loser, just tearing into this person. Told me he left a wife and child behind. I honestly had never heard someone be so ruthless regarding someone who just died. Granted, I didn't know what he was like back in high school, but the level of disrespect really caught me off guard. As someone who has personally struggled with the depression and thoughts of wanting to take my own life and hearing about Bourdain, I didn't know what to say. I heard an analogy I tried to share with them. People taking their own lives is similar to people who jump from burning buildings. They're still afraid of jumping and falling, but as the flames get closer, the fear of burning begins to outweigh the fear of falling. Most people never lose the fear of falling. It's just another greater fear that begins to be a bigger problem. Anyway, neither of them really knew what to say after that, and we stopped playing shortly after they brought the subject up. I hope they slowed down just for a second to consider what flames their classmate might have been facing. Hey man, good on you for actually saying something. Especially online with people you don't really know. It's easy to just, leave the call. Just don't party with that person, unfriend them, whatever. But speaking up about it, saying something, that has the small chance that they would actually listen and that something might be revealed to them. So, yeah, good work, OP. Also, yeah, absurd that people can go that hard on someone who just lost their life. Lack of empathy will never cease to, not amaze, surprise, shock, frighten me. One of those. Next story. A close friend of mine, so I thought, told me I, quote, didn't matter much on my birthday. Initially, I thought it was a joke and there would be a surprise party or something. No, nothing. Another reason I have issues getting close to people except for my girlfriend and family. Next story. I have a large forehead, affectionately referred to as a 5-head by my brother. Not bothered by it at all. But a couple of years ago, talking with a guy on a night out, thought he'd break the ice with some humor, which is great. But he asked if I used my forehead to boost acoustics in rooms. I laughed, but was completely speechless. Next story. I could end you right now and no one could help you. Ex-boyfriend screamed this in my face as he sat on top of me and attempted to strangle me in Mexico while on vacation. He was partially right. When some resort staff, I think 3 men, pulled up in a golf cart, he was able to wave them off and they left. I was able to escape because I somehow managed to kick him in the balls and run. Yeah, I guess that fits the prompt, but oh my god. This dude needs to be locked up. It's not just like a super mean thing to say. This guy's a criminal. He's a murderer waiting to happen. What the hell? Sorry, just really caught off guard by the different vibes. Holy. Next story. At least 3 friends in high school told me to take my own life. I've struggled from depression since a young age, so that made it worse. Also was kind of clingy and had very low self-esteem and was socially awkward. If someone told me that today, even if it was a family member or friend who I wasn't extremely close to, I'd die laughing and text my husband and BFF about how funny it was that people would have thought I care what they thought. I've learned to cope better, mostly because slowly over time I've become dead inside. Next story.
I finally understand why your dad never loved you. You're a freaking female dog.
My mom's only response to me confronting her about her alcoholism. He left when I was 13. When I was a kid, my mom angrily and drunkenly drove my brothers and I to a closed elementary school and yelled,
"Anyone want a free kid?"
at a random old guy. I desperately wished at the time for the old guy to say something, but he didn't. The feeling I got when she said these things is something I'll never forget. Next story. When I was 16, I was working on my aunt's house with my uncle. I was there for 6 months. Anyway, my dad called her just to talk to her, I guess, and when she hung up, she said,
"Your dad didn't even ask about you.
If I was you, I'd go into Christian's room, my older cousin,
get his gun, and shoot myself in the head because no one gives a crap about me."
10 years later, I still haven't forgiven her. When she told me she had cancer, I laughed in her face. And I haven't seen her since my cousin's funeral. Next story. My husband, before we decided to get a divorce, said, "Maybe you're just not meant to be married." We've talked about it years later and he doesn't even remember that, and kinda laughed at me for mentioning it was something that stuck in my memory. Next story. "You're never gonna have friends because you cry all the time." My dad said it to me a lot when I was a kid. I know he didn't mean to hurt my feelings, and he and I are actually very close, but for a long time it made it really hard for me to ask for help when I was being bullied, and even when I was feeling like I wanted to take my own life, because I felt like if I expressed those feelings, it would get worse somehow. Next story. Way back in 6th grade, my first year of junior high, my best friend, maybe my only, became quite popular and told me something along the lines of,
"Everyone says you look like a lost puppy dog following me around all the time. It's annoying."
I was shy and quiet, and now humiliated. This crushed me. We stopped hanging out, and I struggled to make friends for the rest of middle school because I was worried about being a constant annoyance or burden to people. Luckily, I am much better now, but this still pops into my head every once in a while, especially with new situations and people. Next story. I used to be friends with a girl who ended up marrying this piece of crap. She was his second wife. We're Arab American, and so is her husband. Before marrying my friend, his family convinced him to marry a girl from back home to be a housewife. She wore a headscarf, and after marrying, he convinced her to wear niqab, face covering, solely because he thought she was ugly and was embarrassed to be seen with her. I've seen her before, and she was completely average looking. For the years they were married, he never called her by her name, always referring to her as harlot or female dog to her face. They had a son together and were living in the Middle East. In the Middle East, if you get a divorce, the father keeps custody, especially in her case because she was uneducated and never worked a day in her life. She was so desperate to get away from him that she kidnapped their son and ran away. As this friend of mine was telling me this story, she was actually on his side, laughing at the parts where he was abusing this poor girl. My friend and him were engaged at the time, and she was determined to help him hunt his wife down to take his son back. I'm obviously horrified that I used to call this girl my friend, and we haven't been in contact since. She's moved to the Middle East with him, and from what I've heard from mutual friends, he's not a good husband to her either. I just hope his ex is doing okay. Next story. I was about 21 years old when I pulled up to some traffic lights late one night in a super dodgy part of town. Some dude appeared out of the darkness and came up to my car. He was trying to give me the old fake, my car has run out of gas, I need money, blah 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 story. I refused to open the window because I was alone. It was dark and I knew this was a bullcrap story. And to be honest, I was scared. When he saw that his spiel wasn't working, he started walking away. He said, "Don't worry, you're too ugly to even bother assaulting," as he disappeared into the darkness. Next story. My breathtakingly cruel ex-boyfriend looked at me after going on a 2-day cruise with me and said, "I think we're better off as friends." It was the day after my birthday. Other gems include, "I'm not sure I ever loved you. You look better," after losing 60 pounds. He also grabbed me by the throat and choked me when we had an argument. He's a piece of crap. This thread was a lot heavier than I was expecting. I don't know why I wasn't expecting this because, the stories weren't too out of the ordinary for what you'd, usually expect in the thread, but I don't know. The vibes were they're just down today, man. I hope everyone watching strives to be not a piece of crap like the people we hear about in these stories. I'd like to think our viewer base is, just nicer than that. Show kindness to people, love people, show empathy. It is strangely underrated these days. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.